Right now, in this very moment, your body could be reacting to a shift you don't even realize is happening, not in a dramatic way that demands attention, but in quiet, subtle signals that most people brush off as normal. A sudden wave of tiredness in the middle of the day, a strange pressure behind the eyes, a restless night without any clear reason. These are not random. These are not meaningless. And before April 20, these signs may grow stronger, more noticeable, and harder to ignore. The truth is, your body often responds to changes long before your mind understands them, and what is happening right now is part of a pattern that repeats more often than people think, yet very few take the time to recognize it. There is a reason why certain days feel heavier, why emotions rise without warning, and why your energy seems to shift without any external cause. After a new moon phase, the human body can go through a period of adjustment. This is not just belief or speculation. Studies have shown that human sleep cycles, mood patterns, and even hormonal activity can be influenced by natural cycles, including lunar phases. What most people never realize is that the days following a new moon can be the most intense because this is when the internal reset begins. Your system starts processing, clearing, and recalibrating, and that process does not always feel comfortable. It can feel confusing, it can feel draining, and because it does not come with a clear explanation, it often gets ignored. The problem is not the changes themselves. The real problem is the lack of awareness. When signals are ignored, the body does not stop communicating. It simply increases the intensity. That light fatigue turns into exhaustion. That slight emotional shift turns into sudden mood swings. That restless sleep becomes a pattern. And by the time most people notice, they think something is wrong, when in reality, their body has been trying to guide them all along. This is where timing becomes important. The period leading up to April 20 carries a build-up phase where these signals can peak. It is not about fear, it is about awareness. When you understand what is happening, everything starts to make more sense. In this video, you are going to learn about 7 specific body changes that often appear during this phase. These are not random symptoms. Each one has a pattern. Each one has a reason. And once you recognize them, you will start to see your own experiences in a completely different way. You will understand why your energy feels different, why your emotions seem unpredictable, why your body behaves in ways that don't match your usual routine. More importantly, you will learn what these signs could actually mean and why ignoring them might cause you to miss a deeper shift that is already in progress. Most people go through these changes without ever connecting the dots. They treat each feeling as an isolated issue instead of part of a larger cycle. That is why this information matters. Not because it tells you something new is happening, but because it helps you understand what has already been happening around you and within you. There is a difference between reacting and recognizing. Reaction leads to confusion. Recognition leads to clarity. And once clarity begins, the entire experience changes. What once felt random starts to feel structured. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel purposeful. Another reason to stay with this video until the end is that not all of these signs are obvious. Some of them are so subtle that they can easily be overlooked. A slight change in focus, a quiet urge to withdraw, a shift in interest that does not seem important at first. These are the kinds of signals that carry the most meaning, yet receive the least attention. By the end of this video, you will be able to identify these patterns in yourself with much more clarity, and that awareness alone can change how you respond to them. There is also something else that most people do not talk about. These phases do not last forever. They build, they peak, and then they shift, which means what you are experiencing right now is part of a temporary window. Missing that window means missing the opportunity to understand what your body is trying to adjust or release. That is why timing matters. That is why paying attention before April 20 can make a difference. Not because something dramatic will suddenly happen on that exact date, but because it marks a point where the intensity often begins to settle and the effects become clearer in hindsight. As this video continues, each of the 7 signs will be explained in a simple and direct way, so you can connect them to your own experience without confusion. You will not need complicated explanations. You will not need technical language. Just clear patterns, real observations, and a deeper understanding of what your body might be trying to communicate during this period. And once you see it, it becomes difficult to ignore. Welcome to the channel. If you want to stay aware of these patterns and understand more about how your body and mind respond to natural cycles, make sure to subscribe and stay connected. A quiet shift has already begun, and it did not start today. It started right after the last new moon, at a point when most people felt nothing unusual and moved on with their normal routine. But that phase marked a reset point, a moment where cycles begin again, and even if it cannot be seen, it can be felt in subtle ways. This is not random. This is not just another passing feeling. This happens after a powerful new moon cycle, when energy begins to move inward before it expands again. During this period, the body does not stay neutral. It reacts, it adjusts, it tries to keep balance as internal rhythms change. That is why things may feel slightly off, without any clear reason. Energy levels may not match your usual pattern, focus may shift, emotions may rise quietly without a clear trigger. These are not isolated events, they are connected. And what makes this phase different is that it builds slowly. It starts quietly, almost unnoticed, and then it grows. The closer it moves toward April 20, the more noticeable it can become. This is why timing matters. This is why awareness matters. Because once this window passes, the clarity comes later, and most people only understand it after everything has already shifted. There is a pattern that repeats itself in cycles, but it often goes unrecognized because it does not follow a loud or dramatic path. Instead, it works in the background. Your body begins adjusting to a new rhythm, and during that adjustment, signals appear. These signals are not always comfortable, but they are not harmful either. They are part of a process. What makes this phase feel rare is not that it never happens, but that very few people pay attention to it while it is happening. Most people only notice when something becomes too strong to ignore. By that point, the early signs have already passed. That is why this moment is important, because right now, you are still within that window where the signals are clear enough to notice, but not overwhelming enough to force your attention. And this is where the real difference is made, not when everything becomes obvious, but when you can recognize it early. Ignoring these signs does not stop them. It only delays understanding. When the body sends signals, it is not doing it without reason. It is trying to communicate a shift. If that communication is ignored, the signals do not disappear. They increase, they repeat, they become stronger until they are finally noticed. And by then, what could have been understood easily becomes confusing. This is why ignoring these changes can block something important, not because something external is being missed, but because an internal adjustment is being overlooked. Your body is trying to tell you something, and it does not use words. It uses patterns, it uses sensations, it uses changes in energy, mood, and behavior. When those patterns are ignored, the message is delayed, not lost. And that delay creates a gap between what is happening and what is understood. That gap is where confusion grows. A common mistake is to treat each feeling as separate. A tired moment is seen as lack of sleep. A sudden mood shift is seen as stress. A restless night is blamed on routine. Each signal is explained away on its own, without seeing the connection between them. But when these signs appear together, within the same period, following a known cycle, they begin to form a pattern. And that pattern tells a different story. It shows that the body is not just reacting randomly, but adjusting in a structured way. That is why awareness is important, because once the pattern is seen, everything starts to make sense. The confusion begins to fade, and what once felt scattered begins to feel connected. One of the first signs that often appears during this phase is sudden fatigue. This is not the kind of tiredness that comes after physical effort. It can appear even when there is no clear reason. Energy may drop without warning. Tasks that felt easy before may now feel heavier. Focus may take more effort. This kind of fatigue can feel unusual because it does not match activity levels, but it has a purpose. It is the body slowing down to reset. When internal adjustments begin, the system requires more energy to process changes, and that energy is often taken from outward activity. This creates a sense of tiredness, not because something is wrong, but because something is being recalibrated. Ignoring this can lead to pushing harder than needed, which only increases the strain. Recognizing it allows the body to complete its adjustment more smoothly. Another sign that may appear is a sense of pressure in the head. Not a sharp or intense pain, but a light, steady feeling that comes and goes. It may feel like a slight heaviness behind the eyes or around the temples. This can be confusing because it does not always behave like a normal headache. It may not respond to usual patterns. This kind of sensation can be linked to increased mental processing. The mind is trying to organize, filter, and adjust to changes that are not fully conscious. It is working in the background, and that effort can create a sense of pressure. This is not something to fear, but something to notice, because it often appears during periods when internal focus increases, even if outward activity remains the same. Emotional waves are another common part of this phase. Feelings may rise without a clear cause. A calm moment may suddenly shift into restlessness. A neutral mood may turn into quiet sadness or unexpected peace. These changes can feel unpredictable, but they are not without structure. They are often part of a release process. Old emotions that were stored or ignored can begin to surface when the system enters a reset phase. This does not mean something new is being created. It means something old is being cleared. The challenge is that these emotions do not always come with clear explanations, which makes them easy to misinterpret. But when seen as part of a pattern, they begin to make more sense. They are not random, they are transitional. Sleep disturbances also tend to increase during this period. Falling asleep may become harder, or waking up during the night may happen more often. Some may notice vivid dreams or a sense of activity during sleep that feels different from usual. This can be frustrating because it affects rest, but it also reflects increased subconscious activity. The mind continues processing even when the body is at rest. It reorganizes thoughts, emotions, and experiences. This can create a sense of restlessness, even if the body is physically still. Ignoring this pattern often leads to frustration, but understanding it can change the response. Instead of forcing normal patterns, it becomes easier to adapt and allow the process to move naturally. Physical sensations such as tingling or warmth may also appear. These can be felt in the hands, feet, or along the spine. They are usually mild and temporary, but noticeable enough to raise questions. These sensations are often linked to increased activity in the nervous system. As the body adjusts, signals move more actively through neural pathways, creating unusual but harmless sensations. These are not signs of danger, but signs of activity. They show that something is moving, something is shifting. And while they may feel unfamiliar, they are part of the body's way of adapting to change. A gradual loss of interest in things that once felt engaging is another sign that often goes unnoticed. Activities that used to feel enjoyable may now feel empty or less important. This can be confusing because it does not always come with a clear reason. Nothing external has changed, yet the feeling is different. This is often a sign of internal growth. The mind begins to outgrow certain patterns, preferences, or routines. It starts looking for something new, even if it does not yet know what that is. This creates a gap between old interests and new direction. During this gap, things may feel dull or uninteresting. But this is not a loss, it is a transition. Along with this, there may be a strong urge to be alone. Not out of negativity, but out of a need for quiet. Noise, conversation, and activity may feel overwhelming. Silence may feel more comfortable. This is the mind creating space for alignment. When internal processing increases, external input can feel excessive. Reducing that input allows the system to focus inward. This is not isolation in a negative sense, but a form of recalibration. It is the mind finding balance by reducing external pressure. As these signs continue, the importance of timing becomes clearer. Before April 20, this energy builds toward a peak. The signals become more noticeable. The patterns become easier to recognize. After that point, things begin to shift again. The intensity reduces and clarity increases. What felt confusing begins to make sense. What felt scattered begins to settle. This is why the present moment matters, because this is where the signals are active. This is where awareness can make a difference. Waiting until everything passes only provides understanding after the fact. But recognizing it now provides understanding during the process. This phase is not permanent. It is a window. It opens, builds, and then closes. Missing that window does not stop the process, but it removes the opportunity to understand it while it is happening, and that understanding changes everything. It turns confusion into awareness. It turns reaction into observation. It creates a sense of control, not by stopping the process, but by recognizing it. What is important to understand is that these changes are not signs of weakness. They are not signs that something is going wrong. They are signs that something is changing. The body is not breaking. It is adjusting. It is updating. It is finding a new balance. And while that process may feel uncomfortable at times, it is not negative. It is necessary. It is part of how systems reset and realign. Fear often comes from misunderstanding. When something is not clear, it feels uncertain. That uncertainty creates tension. But when the same experience is understood, the tension reduces. The experience does not change, but the perception of it does. That is why awareness matters more than anything else during this phase. Because awareness removes confusion, it replaces it with clarity. At the same time, there is no need to overreact. Not every signal needs a strong response. Not every change needs to be controlled. The goal is not to force the process, but to observe it, to notice the patterns without panic, to allow the body to complete its adjustment without resistance, because resistance often creates more discomfort than the process itself. Ignoring these signs does not make them disappear. It only delays recognition, and that delay can make the process feel more intense than it needs to be. Paying attention does not mean focusing on every detail, but it means staying aware of patterns as they appear. It means noticing changes without immediately dismissing them. It means giving the body the space it needs to adjust. This balance between awareness and calm is what makes this phase easier to move through. Too much attention can create unnecessary worry. Too little attention can create confusion, but a steady level of awareness creates clarity. It allows the process to be seen without being exaggerated. The signals themselves are not the problem. The lack of understanding is what creates difficulty. Once understanding is present, the same signals become easier to handle. They become part of a known pattern instead of random events, and that shift in perception changes the entire experience. As the days move closer to April 20, the patterns may become clearer. The signals may feel stronger, but that does not mean something is wrong. It means the process is reaching its peak, and after that peak, things begin to settle. The body finds its new balance. The mind regains clarity. The system stabilizes. Until then, the most important thing is to stay aware without becoming overwhelmed, to recognize without reacting too strongly, to allow without forcing. Because this is not a moment of disruption, but a moment of transition, and transitions are not meant to be rushed or resisted. They are meant to be understood. So if you've been feeling different lately, if your energy has been shifting, if your emotions have been harder to explain, if your body has been reacting in ways that don't feel normal, now you know why. It was never random. It was never meaningless. It was your body adjusting, responding, trying to bring itself into a new balance during a phase most people never even notice. And the fact that you stayed here, that you paid attention, already puts you ahead of many who ignore these signals and only understand them much later. What once felt confusing now has a pattern. What once felt heavy now has a reason. And that changes everything, because awareness turns uncertainty into clarity. You don't need to fight these changes. You don't need to panic. You just need to notice them, understand them, and allow the process to move naturally. This phase will pass, just like it always does, but the understanding you gain from it can stay with you much longer. And if this helped you see things differently, if even one of these signs felt real to you, then stay connected. There is always more to understand, more patterns to recognize, and more clarity to gain, Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Like this video so more people can become aware of what they might be going through, and share it with someone who might need this right now, even if they don't realize it yet.